23. Clerk Konecki, please call the roll.
Trustee Silella? Trustee Corkery?
Here.
Trustee Kozar?
Here.
Trustee Kumar? Trustee Murphy?
Here.
Trustee Patrick?
Here.
President Kazone.
Here, and we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are going to make one little change. We are going to move the update on the railroad grade separation study. We're going to move that first. The board approved funding for a study to determine the best location for a railroad grade separation project. This presentation will update the board on progress with CDM Smith and detail the scope of work, including opportunities for public participation. Director Guerrera, you'd like to start?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pull up the presentation real quick. As the board knows, and most of the village, obviously grade separation has been a long-standing item in our long-term planning and our comprehensive plan. The UP Railroad bisects our community. We don't have any crossings other than 83, and so we're looking at how do we propose a grade separation, whether it's pedestrian or automotive or vehicle. The board made great strides. Last December, we did hire CDM Smith. And tonight we have Steve Przinski from CDM Smith here with us to help give us a presentation to look at a pretty much initial feasibility study. Looking at our 3 locations, our 3 crossings, and then one other for pedestrian, what would make the best sense for the village to review possibilities, what makes the greatest funding, what's the best option for our village as we move forward. As we all know, this is very expensive. So CDM Smith has had previous experience. They are currently working with our neighbors, Elmhurst and Glen Ellen, on similar sort of studies and designs. So they are kind of experts in this matter and obviously have a lot of experience with the UP within our region. Tonight, what we're trying to do is give an update presentation and then move on into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of this study. The initial has been a lot of data finding and gathering and those sort of items so that we can start building analysis. But we're also looking for some input from the public, from the board, and from key stakeholders in the community on how we want that to be shaped. What's important to our community, as these would be grade separations or a grade separation in Villa Park, and so what's important to our residents and to our board and our constituents. With that, I can turn it over to Steve Przinski. He can kind of step you through on really what we're trying to talk about is the why are we looking at a study. We all know the locations. What's that study look like? And then he'll give the next steps. How long does it take? What's the actual time frame if we go after state funding, federal funding, kind of some of those, and what's the time frames and what it would realistically look like if we could move in a linear fashion and some ballpark budgetary sort of estimates and costs for those different steps. And with that, I can turn it over to Mr. Przinski.
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon, board, or evening. Pleasure to be here again. My name is Steve Przinski. I'm with CDM Smith. And as Michael said, we've been tasked with figuring out the why. And that ultimately, I'm sure everyone has their perceptions, right? You all live in Villa Park, and you know where those main travel ways are, and you probably know where you've got some development or some environmental issues that could be impactful. You've probably got your own ideas about where a crossing, a grade separation for pedestrians, bicyclists, and possibly vehicles would go, right? And so, it very well may go there. But in the end, to do that due diligence, to really understand the why, like what are we going to impact, how many properties need to be taken, where will those future bicycle trends take non-motorized travelers, and ultimately that grades out in future funding, which could be the biggest criteria of making this feasible. So that's our study, the grade separation feasibility study. So we've got 10 slides. I understand we have roughly probably like 25 minutes right now. So this is a high-level overview. As Michael said, I'm going to walk through our agenda. I'll move to it right now. And you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about our team, so you kind of know who you'll be working with. We'll do an overview of the study, go through the current schedule of the plan itself and the purpose of the study, but also walk through the overall, what we'll call the project process and phasing. That is, you know, planning a study through design and construction. And then we'll talk about the immediate next steps. All right. Okay, so anyway, my name, again, is Steve Pazinski. I'm subbing for our awesome project manager who works with Michael on basically almost a daily basis, right? So I've got 31 years experience. I previously served as the assistant county engineer for Kane County and worked for IDOT for those two combined about 13 years. I've been consulting for 18 years, planning, design, construction, and maintenance. So I've seen all those different phases, gives you a good perspective, and my role here is to kind of support our team and also check with Michael to make sure that we're exceeding expectations. Jessica Carroll, she is our project manager. She's on spring break with her family this week, so you're stuck with me. So my apologies, I'll do my best. But she is going to lead a team of planners and engineers that have fantastic experience when it comes to feasibility studies. Now, this happens to be a very kind of a specific feasibility study and with specific skill set requirements, which I'll get to in a moment. But in terms of our firm, you know, we are a worldwide firm. We've got roughly 5,500 employees. ENR will rate us basically in a top 25 on a number of different design and planning categories. And here in Illinois, it is one of our primary offices. We have a Chicago office with about 110 people. We've got 25 traffic modelers working out of our Lisle office, and then we have another office in Carbondale, Illinois, also about 25 people. So we do have a major presence, and all those people you see there are local. Not that we wouldn't tap into some of our greater, you know, more senior people or certain experts if they're needed, but we do have resources in order to make sure that we're doing work that is going to serve you very well. Oh, and one other thing is, I would like just to recognize there will be a Q&A afterwards, but if there are questions as we're going along, I'm going to probably put forward some, you know, ideas, some facts, some propositions. If you have questions, please feel free to interrupt and ask those questions. So in terms of, Michael had mentioned similar experience, right? So we're doing these are both probably maybe a little wider in scope, but they both include a grade separation in Elmhurst and in Glen Ellen. And that is, we've done the phase one, the NEPA planning, if you will, and right now we're in phase two for both of those projects, putting together construction documents. And those projects require intense coordination and review by UP Railroad, Metra, Illinois Commerce Commission, DuPage County for stormwater. There is, and all of these things will have to be considered as the why for the Villa Park grade separation. So these all come into play. And a couple other projects that we've done is the DuPage County Long Range Transportation Plan. Again, that was like working with the community, understanding the input, and then developing a project list and recommended improvements. So all those things kind of have similarities in terms of the work we've done. So this doesn't come out super clear up there, but you know, the intent of the studies is to assess the nature of the demand and user access requirements across the UP. We know it's been a long-term barrier. You know, there are no at-grade crossings, you know, and there's, I think, 90 train events a day. And I live in Glen Ellen. I see those train stops and breakdown as well, 3 or 4 hours, and you have a mess on your hands. It's important. We get it. You know, we see if you don't have a place for pedestrians to go under, we don't have it in Glen Ellen, and they're building one there too because it's important for safety because people do crazy things when trains are stopped. So in essence, that is, you know, we're here to figure out what's feasible, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So purpose of the project, assess overall travel for both motorized and non-motorized. We want to improve user safety, right? We know a lot of people, there's park use downtown, there's business uses, there's bicycles, pedestrians, vehicles, emergency trucks that go across. We want to reduce the UP railroad crossing delays. And then we want to know a little more qualitative. We want to know start and stop of people's trips. So we're going to look at other data that talks about where bikes start and stop. Same thing for pedestrians. We'll talk with your emergency services. We'll also look at providing additional circulation in the downtown area as possible. I'm sure there are things wherever this crossing might go, this grade separation might go, there will be local improvements that have to accompany it. And then lastly, we're never going to ignore the idea of it, it's your downtown, right? We're never going to ignore the economic development aspect of it. There may be opportunities to reconfigure businesses' access or frontage. So those are things that will be considered as we're looking for criteria and comparing the various locations. Any questions at this point? Okay, great. So this is your study area. I know, so you see the north and south limits. I know that Villa Park obviously extends to the north and to the south, but this is kind of the best, aerial view to kind of show the details of the location or the study area. So again, we're looking at vehicular, which would likely include also provision for bike and pedestrian, and then just bike and ped underpass and overpass. So we'll look at up to 4 locations that ultimately would, what is the viability? What are the amount of impacts? What's it going to cost? How many right-of-way impacts are there? Do you have problems with, contaminated soil that's going to cost you more during construction? We're going to look at the things that you feel are important in terms of determining where ultimately this, the grade separation occurs. And right now, obviously, we're looking at Addison, Ardmore, and Villa, and then also looking at Westmore Avenue. And then we'd look at a separate location for only a bike ped grade separation. So I got to say that you might look at the rest of the slides, they look pretty nice. I did this one, so my apologies for the basic graphics. But ultimately, this is kind of that first sneeze or snapshot of what's most important to you guys and what's least important, right? So it's just kind of like, you can see in here, business impacts and residential impacts. If we're going to put in, if you're going to invest and put in a vehicular overpass, for instance, that needs 21 foot of clearance, that's something that's going to be, you're talking 400 to 500 feet of approach. This is not without impacts, right? So there's drainage, there's water mains that might have to be relocated, there's properties that could have to be relocated or impacted, part of their frontage could be removed. So what's the most important to you? So I'm just kind of going to go through these things. Business and residential, obviously that's fairly obvious, right? What about emergency response times? Which of those locations is going to provide the most direct route from your fire station to the greatest population density? Those are some of the things Michael said, we're gathering data. Those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of analysis and comparisons. We'll look at roadway, path, and sidewalk access. There's a couple of parks. I know there's a couple of where there were accidents or incidences with train pedestrian fatalities where someone was going to a park. And so these things are also important, right? So then, I talk about businesses. It could be parking impacts. We talked a little bit about what's underneath, If we're digging up soil that has petroleum contaminants, that costs extra. So we're gonna do a screening for that purpose. But how important is that in terms of, deciding where to put this, what that grade separation looks like? And stakeholder support, right? You want your community, and we recognize that you have to listen to your constituents, and so there is part of, you can see on the bottom here, a part of the public survey that the village is going to conduct is there'll be an opportunity for residents to give their input as to what's important to them. So, and again, ultimately the village is the decision maker. This input's advisory. It's contemplated and considered, but ultimately it's up to the village to use that information to make those decisions. So as we take a look at this, and I also have other 1 and other 2 on the bottom, is there anything that comes to your mind at this point that says, hey, we should be considering this? You know, we'd like to, whatever interaction we have tonight, I'd like to take that and tell our team that that should be going into our baseline criteria. So I'm going to just open it up to the board. So is there anything up there that, you know, like that's just not important to us? Or why aren't you thinking about this? Yes, sir.
I think traffic definitely is a concern, so I want to know what the traffic impacts on the area would be.
I'm a little embarrassed that it wasn't up there. But yes, that's a very, that's a very good point. Anybody else have any questions or input?
Just a quick question on the Westmore Avenue crossing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've, for Ardmore, Addison, and Villa, you have, you know, the average auto daily traffic counts. There's none on Westmore.
Yeah.
Is that just because there's not a lot there?
No, we actually
Because
just
it's-
don't have that number at this point. So,
Although, wait a minute, there's no crossing there. Never mind. Never mind that question.
yeah,
Never
to
mind
be
that
honest,
question.
I actually, now that I think about it, and Joe's probably telling me, or Joe Maury over here probably says, the
Yeah.
ICC website, all their grade crossings are listed on a database,
Okay.
and they've got the, so anyway.
Never mind.
But yeah,
That's my
Gotcha.
mistake on that one. Sorry about that.
yep.
Ignore that question.
Oh, all good, all good. Anyone else? Okay, well, great. So ultimately, you know, that public survey, that'll go to everyone, including yourselves, and that's going to happen towards the latter part of this month. And we're going to work with the village, providing them all the questions, basically, to get usable data, so that'll, you know, we can use that as part of informing our alternatives analysis. So in terms of the project, this is, we've got like a 8 to 9 month time frame. I don't have a "you are here" sign, but we know we are here in April. So we're in the middle of the targeted outreach. We've been doing mostly data collection and data evaluation to this point. No concepts have been developed. There's no analysis that have occurred yet. So we're still at that point where we're actually just developing that criteria and understanding, you know, really what the context are of these various crossings. So, you know, we'll get into that. We'll talk, the objectives workshop is a workshop we'll do to get qualitative data from the village, you know, just kind of walk through and say, hey, what's important to you? What have you seen? Stuff that's not going to come out to like traffic counts and, you know, soil surveys, you know, a little more harder to find data. After that, we'll start to put together our concepts. And that is, these are high-level concepts, right? These are not detailed engineering drawings, but they're feasible. Understand how much right-of-way is going to be required, you know, how much concrete for, you know, if we go over, we're going to have to build, you know, a bridge, a structure. If we go underneath, it's going to be a tunnel with walls. So we'll assess what those costs are, and we'll be able to compare them, you know, for the village's dissemination. So that's a 3-part process: concepts development, refinement after some conversations, going back. And if you see the blue, we're going to bring this back to you guys as well, kind of like bringing that at an incremental, you know, advancement of the study. So you'll get the comment and see where that study's going and ask more detailed questions. And then obviously then we finalize that study. You have a report, and that's kind of going to outlay your, if it becomes something that you endorse and you want to adopt for your capital plan, it'll also have that roadway of how this works for the future steps and funding that. Any questions on the schedule? How am I doing on time? I haven't, okay. All right, so again, this is the feasibility study. Here's an 8 to 9 month process. Michael did say outcomes of this phase, right? Understanding the alternative pros and cons, identify alternatives to carry forward to the next phase. So those are the really, that's what's coming out of you guys hiring CDM Smith for this project. After the feasibility study is done, you would go into what is called the NEPA phase. If you're going to use federal funding for construction, this is required by law in order to go through this process. IDOT has a programmatic agreement with the Federal Highway Administration that They manage that. So I'm sure Michael has taken these projects through IDOT, Bureau of Local Roads and Streets, and they have their own process, right? So, you know, and I will just say that, I'll just say that the key outcomes here would be the identification of a preferred alternatives. So this 18-month process, when you get to the end of this process, you'll have a single approved alternative that you will be moving forward with for, you know, the rest of the time. You know, so you've got 18 to 24 months. It'll be a very robust engineering study and additional public outreach. And then at the same time, this 18-month process, you're also going to begin to identify and secure funding. So I'll give you an example for both for both Elmhurst and Glen Ellen. When those initial cost estimates came out, they're roughly $20 million projects. And so there's a requirement typically that the locals will have to fund 20%, and you can get up to 80% federal funding. But that local funding can also come from other local sources such as the ICC. We have a terrific grants program, a grant writer, and you know, for both of those, now those costs have similarly are recently escalated because of the various materials and labor. I think we're all aware of that. But at one point, we were, I think they were both on the hook for roughly 5 to 7% of the total cost. So that's how these big outlays become affordable. But you have to follow the federal NEPA process. So we call it phase one, our planners call it NEPA. So that's the process that IDOT recognizes, and it's required. And that is, you can't, oh, it is showing. So we're estimating that is, the cost of that phase is roughly $600,000 to $800,000. All right, phase two.
That 600,000, 608,000, is that, can that be part of the grant? Or is that you have to outlay that?
So there are ways to do that, but typically they want to see local investment on, and that in terms of the application that shows merit, and so it's typically not. But IDOT has in the past helped fund phase one projects that they feel are important. And know there were some fatalities. There may be ways to work with IDOT. They are actually becoming a lot more innovative in terms of how they work with the local municipalities. There might be ways to do that. I know our clients have funded phase one, and funding it yourself also allows you some flexibility in terms of how you process this. So there's a little less review with that, and often that saves you money as well. So that is something that we'll work with Michael and his team and certainly report back as necessary. But there are ways that you want to do that to give yourself more flexibility, and then, you know, realistically, those dollars come to funding phase three engineering, which is also a fairly hefty sum, and then the big dog is construction.
Hang on, just Trustee Kozar?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So just repeat that. Did you say the grant writing process was 600 to 800,000?
No. So we would do grant management in both phase one and phase two, but it's the phase one NEPA process. That is the environmental process. It consists of environmental surveys, engineering, and public involvement. Those three concurrent phases is what comprises the phase one study. As part of that, as a small part of that, is the grant aspect. You know, we have someone that previously worked for NEPA, and she, you know, that just happens concurrent with it. That's a small portion of it. But for instance, there are some big grants that are available right now in the infrastructure bill. I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but there are raise grants, you know, so depending on, there's a lot of different variables, and I won't comment as to the probability, but there are always new notices of funding opportunities that become available, which we're looking at all the time for our clients. So
You guys assist with the grant writing process, or you do the grant writing process?
we can do the grant writing process. A lot of these things are a more simple application. like a lot of the funding that we obtained for Glen Ellen and Elmhurst came from the MPO, which is CMAP, and they use CMAC funds, congestion management, air quality. And so projects that show like this, like we would, if you're going to, like cars idling at a stop for 90 trains a day, if you can get throughput there, that'll show a reduction in CO2 emissions. They want that. That's good for your application. If you're really good at filling out these applications, and sometimes they take quite a story in order to really, you know, like anyway, we're very good at that aspect, and like I said, we've gotten, I think both of them are currently at about $20 million in outside funding for what are now in the range of $35 to $40 million projects.
And your fees for writing those grants is approximately what?
Pardon me?
Your fees for writing those grants?
Oh, for a raise grant is, you know, I don't want to, it's small potatoes compared to the rest of those fees, that 600 to 800,000. Like, yeah, we would work on that. Those would be negotiated. I'm going to guess those applications, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking, but a raise grant, a federal grant with benefit cost ratio, I'm just saying this to have full transparency, that is a serious effort. You're writing a book. They want to see a very well-developed story. We've seen those grants. Now, I think we just got a grant for Cook County in the realm of like $15 million. That grant was somewhere in the range of $60,000 to write. So those are ballpark numbers that I'm grabbing from the sky. So just, but they are, for purposes of answering your question, that's what we're talking about. It's not cheap, you know, but there's substantial effort for those federal grants that are not formulaic.
Appreciate that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
you're welcome. So, so back to, yeah, so something looks a little odd here, but yeah, phase 2 design, but we're not seeing the arrow here. So this maybe that comes up now. There we go. Yeah, sorry about that. So you're looking at, and this is something Michael cautioned me on, and he's right. He goes, Steve, this looks a little rosy, and I'm like, yes, that's correct. There are a lot of variables here that could potentially delay these durations. So I would say that this would be the aggressive path. And so we're looking, right now, you're looking at about 4 years. And then phase 2 is when you put together your final set of construction drawings, permits, you acquire the right-of-way, and that you're looking at somewhere $1.75 to $3 million for that work. And again, I don't want to scare you off with this. I'm just trying to give those numbers. It might be less, it might be more. If it's simply that you go with a pedestrian bicycle underpass or overpass, that could be substantially lower. So as we're going along, I'm just giving you the 30,000 foot view tonight. And then lastly, phase 3 construction. You know, that is getting bidding it out, getting a contractor out there, closing down roads, and you know, building your project. And cost of this phase, again, ballparked $20 to $25 million. It could be a lot lower if it's simply a pedestrian. Yes.
I'm actually, so what does this include other than the pedestrian path, kind of? I came in a little bit late, maybe that's why I missed it. What does this phase, what are we getting?
So this is the feasibility study portion right here. This is the next 8 to 9 months where we're pretty much figuring out, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I understand the feasibility and all the way down to our final project cost of $20,000 to $25,000 to get what kind of underpass, or is it bike, pedestrian, and cars? Is that what you're looking at, or what are you
That's what we're evaluating.
Okay.
We're evaluating, you know, a vehicular under or overpass, which would likely accommodate bikes and peds as well. Or a separate, simple bicycle, I don't say simple, bicycle, pedestrian, underpass or overpass.
Okay, and what is the cost differential generally between those two?
Well, I'll give you an idea of that underpass right now. I think we're looking at in Glen Ellen, that underpass is, now there's a lot of other things that go with it, but I'll give you in the realm of ballparking it $6 to $10 million.
For the bicycle?
Yes, bike ped.
Bike path.
Underpass, right.
Underpass, but the other is about 20 to 25 million.
Yes, right.
Okay, and what about the granting opportunities? Are they generally towards the bigger whole procedure, or is there equal granting opportunities, do you think?
That's a
for
good question,
the
and I would,
bike pedestrian path?
I'd rather bring that to our planners that
Yeah.
do these applications, because I'd say that is not my, I'm an engineer, I'm on the design side.
Yes.
Give me the bridge, I'll design that, so, but our planners have, I can get back on that question. But you're right, it's a good point. There's a lot of different criteria that sing a song to the various requirements of those grants. So that is it's a really insightful question. All right, so let me go back to where we were. Oh, and essentially that's next steps. So next step is a 1, 2, 3 survey that the village will be issuing with questions about criteria and various metrics and how we'll use that to inform our alternatives analysis. We will have that project objectives meeting with the village and looking at the more qualitative aspects. And you can see here, developing criteria matrix, development of alternatives, initial evaluation of those alternatives, and we come back to this committee with an interim report on where we stand, finalize and develop the final recommendations. And that's the next 8 to 9 months.
So I guess just to wrap it up a little bit, where we're at is, I think, as you heard, and to use Steve's word, sing a song. The point of this study is to determine what song do we want to sing, and what's the best song for Villa Park. The next steps would be the 1, 2, 3, the input that we're seeking in terms of ranking of priorities a little bit there, what's important to the board, what's important to the residents, different committees, to try to gather that information, because that will be built into their decision-making matrix when we evaluate the locations, so that we can bring that back. I think Steve touched on it. A lot of this feasibility study also is to identify what funding of sources, I think I've heard a lot of those questions, are eligible for the different types of locations. That's a component of that. And where do we want to focus, right? Applications can be somewhere between $2,000 to $60,000. That's a lot of money. We're going after a lot of money. I want to make sure that we're kind of focused in a cohesion path of where we want to move forward with that. And so, because there is a lot of variables, working with the railroad is, in my experience, can take years. And so we want to make sure that we have the correct story to tell. Because if you have the correct story to tell, you get a whole lot of other support elsewhere, and it helps move that package through. So with that, we can open up to more Q&A, or Your Honor, however you wish to do it, but I just wanted to kind of wrap that up.
Trustee Kumar.
About our budget, though, I don't believe this is in our 23 budget, correct?
Go
This
ahead,
study?
Andrew.
Study.
Yes.
The study is.
Yeah.
The study is.
This part of it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
approved
it's
that about a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was
No,
approved.
I know we approved it, but was it in the original budget?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
The feasibility study is, from the study, if we determine we wish to move forward and how we wish to move forward, then those future engineering studies, as Steve said, depending on our path, there may be some funding for phase 1. It's kind of comes back and forth. There's usually definitely funding for phase 2 and construction, I would say. But we need to plan, but we want to plan accordingly. And that's the kind of the point of the study.
Okay. Anyone else?
But just one
Major.
quick comment is we have looked around to try and find the firm that will help us have the best chance to move forward. And talking with other communities, we feel like we have the right firm, and that way we can, they have worked with ICC, they have worked with the railroads, they have worked with these projects and gotten successful results. So there's a long road ahead. There are other, parts of it that we can, there'll be opportunities to get input on a lot of different things. They've got the project up and running. It's with the journey of 1,000 miles starts but a single step. These are steps 3, 4, 5, about like that. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Trustee Kumar?
Overall, I'm glad we're doing this study. That area has been a trouble spot for years and years. I grew up right next to there. A lot of people have perished on those tracks over the years that I know has happened. Now, why, what, when, and how I think it'll come out of the study a little bit and their analysis, so I am glad. Whether I'm on board to get all the way through this at this point, absolutely not. It's good to find our information.
All right, we will make this presentation, we'll put it on our website and send out the link. We'll have, I'll work with our communications, CIO. We created a website like we do with all of our projects on the public works side, so we'll upload it onto that page and then pass that out so that it's available for everyone to see that may have missed this meeting.
Is there going to be a mailing out to homeowner or residents for the survey?
We were planning more of the social media platform, just a little bit of cost savings to push it out through there. We will definitely move it through our commissions, the bike ped committees here in the CC. We'll obviously pass it along to those committees, and we can pass it on to any of the commissions. But we were planning more of the social media route through Facebook, through our website, those sort of avenues.
Okay, good. Hey, any other questions? Trustee Kumar?
I don't think a whole citywide mail-in may be necessary, but maybe a mail-in around the track area to the houses around there may not, if possible, may not be a bad idea, because they're directly first affected, and they may know things we don't know necessarily, or communication to that group. We can put stickers on their door if, mail-in costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you for your time, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
If I can introduce.
Go ahead, Manager.
The second item on our agenda tonight is a discussion about the permit fees restructuring with the new International Commercial Code and 2021 code adoption. And as part of that ICC 2021 building code adoption, the entire Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code has been reviewed, and it's been put against challenged against the department, the Community Development Department goal of continue to streamline the permitting process by implementing new procedures, and the significant changes of continue to streamline the building permit process for improvement. So one of the charges we've heard from this board is to make the village more friendly to contractors, builders, who will, especially if living within the code, not turning the other way, but making it easier to get to yes, figuring out what things need to be changed, what things need to be improved, and get them to a position where they can build quickly. One of the pieces of this is to change the way that we charge fees, and this would be based on evaluation or cost of job that we have predominantly done it on evaluation or cost of job, and they're very difficult to assess that, and we tend to get a lot of projects that are therefore undervalued, and therefore we don't get much of a permit fee, and despite the fact that there's a lot of work that goes into it. So the idea here is to streamline that permitting process. The methodology for permit fee calculation should be based on a square foot of new habitable building or remodel, and they also have some minimum fees. We have a chart of the minimum fees. It's not in this memo, but on the second page of this memo, there's a detailed analysis of other villages and what they are charging for different fees. And then the last part is adding a new section for impact fees. They are one-time payments to the village to offset the financial impact of development for new residential only, based on the added population, and those would be transferred to the Parks Department to pay for recreation and purchase of, where there is options, purchase of new land, primarily for park equipment, although the annual fees generated would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 a year. So sorry, it'd be more like, I think it was 300,000. I asked Mark that question and I didn't write it down. But it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, $30,000 to $50,000 a year. I'll get you that number. Anyway, so these fees would be assessed only for residential because that impacts our need for park needs. This is the beginning of the process. There will be an open house to discuss this and a chance for builders, remodelers, and other trades to come in and talk about the implementation of the 2021 codes. We are now 2 codes back, so it also is a little more difficult for builders who are working in various different cities that are used to being at the most recent code, so this could actually help. We've also worked with B&F, a firm, to help us modernize the code and look into all the various different, not just the international commercial code, the residential code, the plumbing, fire, et cetera. So with that introduction, Mark McLaughlin cannot make it tonight. So we have Janita Anderson, who is the head of the code enforcement department, and so she will, and anyway, she's going to be here to do the rest of the presentation. And Janita, take it away.
We're trying to streamline our process by adding it's going to be just one fee instead of contractors trying to figure out what the fees are going to be with plan review, with the permit fee, with the inspections. Everything will be included in the fees for new residential, new commercial additions, remodels. And then there'll be a separate fee for like small projects, decks, demolition, fences, siding, windows. But we're trying to streamline our process to make it easier for homeowners and contractors to know exactly how much their permits will be.
Good. I think it's a great step in the right direction. I know for 2 years, we've been talking about getting builders in here, and the builders that I've talked to have always said it's a difficult trying to figure out what the fees are, and I'm glad to see that we're moving ahead with this. Also, the manager and I have been talking about bringing in builders and discussing this, and hopefully we'll get that going in the next couple of months. But I think this is a great first step to streamlining and getting us pretty much on a par with all the surrounding towns here. Any questions or comments from the board? Trustee Kozar.
So some of our fees look like they're going up 3 times as much, sometimes more. What is and I'm going to call them customers, whoever is taking out the permit, what are they getting for that?
All of their inspections will all be included. Are we talking for new?
Well, I guess, I'm just looking at, there's some substantial increases being done. Is there a commitment?
Which fees are we talking about?
Any of the permit fees. So take a basement, for example.
Okay.
20 by 24 basement, 480 square feet. Cost the job maybe about $4,000. Right now it would cost $270. If you want an example, I'm just talking in the abstract, but the proposed fee based on the square footage would be about $750. So that's 3 times as much, just as a random example. So it would seem to me that there should be something that the person, the individual who's taking out the permit should be getting in exchange for a 3-time increase. For example, certain standards from the permitting department that say permits will take X amount of time. So that not only do they know why they're paying 3 times as much, but there's also kind of a give and take where the permit department says.
I think the current fee is, I don't think it's a 4-time increase. The low, you're talking about where it says low, high, and.
Well, if you want to go through the example, I think we're getting bogged down on time, but take a 480 square foot basement.
800, the new fee would be 800.
Right. But as it stands right now, if it was $4,000 and you're just talking insulation, drywall, and electrical outlets, you know, what is that, about 14 sheets of drywall? Seems reasonable, you could have that done for $4,000 thereabouts. The current fee would be $270. I mean, the exercise of the dialogue here is not to dispute
Right.
what our current fees are.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary, but I think we can all agree that it's going up considerably on certain things.
Correct.
So my point is, if we're raising permit fees to that much, can the person or company or whatever taking out that be assured that they're going to get their permit in a certain amount of time, a time frame?
Well,
So
we
some
try to
give and
get 'em-
take from the village.
Well, we try to get them out between 5 and 10 business days. Smaller projects. The bigger projects, the new construction, it takes longer because of engineering. Engineering, they send theirs out to an engineering firm, and that takes longer for review. But the part that's done by the building inspector and the plumbing inspector is normally done between 5 and 10 business days. That-
Which is pretty standard, is that standard?
Correct.
Yeah.
The other thing we're finding is that the estimated costs are often, for whatever reason, not nearly what the actual cost of the update is. By making it simple, based on a square footage, then there would be there'd be no advantage to leave out part of a project or something like that. Or there might be, or miscalculate, whatever the other parts are going into a project. But yes, if you did a
What I'm
very
getting-
simple
What I'm
project,
getting at, though,
yeah.
is if we're going to raise our fees, we should make a commitment that you're going to get your permit within a certain amount of time.
Understand that?
Let me just sum it up like,
Right.
because my experience with the village is that I think every permit that I've applied for has, with the exception of just one recent driveway permit that I just got now, everything has taken more than 10 days.
Well, you also have to factor in that if you don't have your contractors and we have to wait on information from your contractors, that's on your contractors at that point, because if we're waiting on bond and insurance and your contractor doesn't give it to us, or they give us the wrong one and we have to wait additional time for them to give us the information that we're requesting, that could take longer.
Oh, I understand that. If
Right.
all the information's not in, the clock doesn't start
Right.
ticking.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things we are going to do is try and take out some of, there's one type of, for contractors as opposed to plumbing, electrical, some of these things that require state certifications, those will still have to get their bonding and their information. But we're looking at not, we have one of our certifications, which is for general contractors or contractors, which we're looking at removing because there is no such statewide certification process, and sometimes we've found that slows the process down without much gain. So yes, there are going to be some increases. We're going to try and move things forward either way, but this will fully fund this will better fund the program, allow us to add in one of the things we can do with this slightly more revenue, although this is not a for people who are doing a more complete project in the same square footage, this isn't going to be much of an increase. But for your example of somebody doing just a drywall project, that because of the square footage, you would see a higher increase than if you did a full plumbing redo in that same 400 square foot basement. But to get to the short answer is yes, we're trying to make things move faster. We're also trying to make things more equitable with the way we charge fees. So
I'd like to see the increase of permit fees attached to some sort of minimum, and perhaps if it goes over that minimum and all the information's in, the clock starts ticking. If they don't get their permit in a reasonable amount of time, whatever we decide that time frame is, I think there should be some sort of incentive or something back to the requester.
I think that we need to be tracking how quickly we get permits out anyway. I think that's something,
I
that's
agree.
one of the performance measures I'd like to see us put in and find out where we're going slow. If it's a matter of not getting information, to keep continually improving our process. And I think Danita, her staff, and Mr. McLaughlin are dedicated to that principle as well. Also the front office staff, which I think we've got some excellent people there now, so.
I'd also like to see something in there if the homeowner is doing the work themselves, that there should be a discount of some sort.
I don't agree. I think if the homeowner's doing it himself, the review and everything is still the same, and probably a little bit more, because the homeowner still has to show light, for electrical and plumbing, they still have to show some kind of a licensure on that.
Well, then they're not doing it themselves.
Well, sometimes they will. They'll say they got the plumbing license.
This is early. This is early in the process.
but-
Those are good comments. We're
That's
just,
the point of the dialogue, right?
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you.
So if you need a plumber or you need an electrician, you're hiring an outside contractor, and it doesn't really apply. My comment doesn't. If it's just a
we can look
homeowner,
at
putting in some windows in their house or something like that, trying to make some improvements on their house, trying to save some money, trying to do it themselves. They have to do it by the standard. That's required by the village, absolutely. But I'd like to see them get some sort of discount or incentive to be able to work on their own home.
Okay, something we can look at that. Okay. Any other question? Trustee Kumar?
So how did you come up with the permitting fee costs per se? Is it similar to other villages around here? or
Yes.
what? Yeah.
Yes, if you look at the second page, it has the comparables on it
Okay.
with other municipalities in the area of what they charge.
And per square foot is pretty common among villages. That's how we did it when I was it's one of the standards that's often used. We did it that way when I was in Centralia, Missouri, working with the Boone County office.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Danita. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for filling in on short notice.
Okay, with that, we will open up for public comments. Mr. Maury, go ahead.
Let me guess, you want to talk about trains?
Of course.
It was just a wild guess.
No, I'll be brief. The Bike Pedestrian Transit Subcommittee voted to approve recommendations on this on grade separations back in 2021. And we presented that to the village executives in December of 21, and then it also was forwarded on in July of 22 to Manager Harline once he was hired. So all we ask is that if you would, if you haven't already done so, to share our work product with CDM Smith, so that we're not as detailed in the funding sources and things like that, but we looked at things a little more intimately in some areas, a little more broadly in others. And so we haven't done so. We'd actually share that product so that we can feel like that our work is, appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Make one quick comment.
Go ahead.
My understanding of the importance of this started with our conversation. So,
Okay, any other public comments? Okay, seeing that, we have a motion to adjourn from the committee of the whole.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Corkery, Trustee Murphy, second?
I'll second
Okay,
that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will give everybody about 10 minutes. We'll reconvene for our regular meeting about 5 after 7.